Welcome back, everyone, to Market Conversations. I'm Jerry Hall, broadcasting live from beautiful Costa Rica. As you can hear the church bells sounding in the background, we're ringing in a new Friday night live stream. I have a special guest, a longtime YouTube contributor, and a guy that I really appreciate his practical approach to looking at this space. It's the Digital Nomad Investor from Thailand going to be joining us. Let me quickly go through this sucker because I see we've got Just in Time, Lori, Bill, Win Mullet, Brady doesn't count, Mr. Magoo, Jacob, XRP holder for life, right on. Folks, tonight is a very interesting show. Topic being the headwinds and tailwinds for our beloved XRP. Quickly for definition purposes, a headwind, like if you were on a sailboat, are the winds that are coming at you, giving resistance to your forward progress. A tailwind is that beautiful wind that comes and envelops your sails and propels you forward. So we're going to talk about these things. We're going to talk about common accepted terminology in the space. These quote unquote rallying cries or things that I hear like we need institutional money to come into the space to take us to the next level. We need regulatory clarity. And if that happens, XRP's going to the moon, baby. All these kind of things, I believe, should be explored. Trust me, I'm not selling my XRP. I am an XRP holder. It's the largest holdings in all of my portfolio, but I'm also not a sheep. I'm going to learn. I'm going to bring information that I learned from the outside and bring it to this space. And I have done that. And I've got some things I want to talk to you guys about. Things that I believe can shine a light and provide some insight to how you construct your investment strategy. So, without any further ado, let's pretend that I have some really cool graphic overlay. Count to 10, and here comes the Digital Nomad Investor.
Hey,
DNI, what's shaking, baby?
What's up, Jerry? What's going on?
Hey, I want to ask you before we get into these topics, just real quickly, with all the news that I'm hearing, see, obviously here in Latin America, they've been very, very stringent on a protocol as it pertains to being in public. Now, our businesses are open. Some of them have taken major hits when it was heavy lockdown, but for the most part, the country's open for business. Now, tourism is directly affected, so a big part of the country's livelihood is affected, but you are free to move around. All they ask is masks. Wear your mask anywhere in public. You can't get in a taxi without a mask, can't get in a bus without a mask. And so far, we've avoided any further lockdowns and things of that nature because of massive spikes in numbers and cases and all that stuff. What is it like being boots on the ground there in Thailand?
They have a pretty comprehensive program for the whole medical situation, and it seems to be working. And unfortunately, though, it's decimated the tourism industry, as you've mentioned, where you're at. A big part of the economy is based on that, especially where the part of the country I'm at. It's all it's I don't know how much, but it's almost all tourism, business-wise. So they've done a good job of controlling the situation medically, but they've just gutted the economy. And I've been watching some of the other expats that have been doing on-the-ground videos, in the locations and just touring different business areas and districts. And they're saying like 80 to 90% of the businesses are either closed down temporarily or they're just out of business, and there's for sale signs everywhere for these businesses. So, but they've, the mandatory masks, when you go anywhere from the 7-Elevens to the shopping malls and every business in between that is open, you have to sign in. They have a clipboard outside each business. You sign in your name, the time, your cell phone number. You have to disinfect your hands with the hand cleaner, and they check your temperature. They have a scanner for your forehead.
Sure.
The 7-Elevens have a hand scanner. You just automatically go up, put your hand up against it. So it's, from A to Z been really comprehensive, and they're slow to reopen too. So, there's that trade-off. It's a balancing act. How much you want to maintain or control the medical situation versus giving up or sacrificing your economy.
Well, let me ask you this: with these extreme measures, what is the country of Thailand talking about doing as it pertains to the economy? Do they discuss and talk about stimulus and trying to invigorate the economy by ejecting money directly to businesses and citizens?
I haven't heard anything about stimulus to the business. Well, they've got like some programs. Let me take that back. When you come into the country too, the ones that are allowed in under special circumstances, you have to quarantine at your own expense up to 14 days in a hotel that's been designated. I'm sure there's some sort of, I don't know if there's compensation for the hotels, but they're doing to the citizens a nominal amount per month. I mean, it amounts to about $125, $130. And but not everyone qualifies for it. So it's, that part stimulus wise, they're not doing anything like, you've seen in countries like the US that has a whole stimulus package they did once. Nothing like that. So they're just, I don't, who knows? It's a wait and see program here in terms of when they're going to reopen the country. They're talking about doing it on a rolling basis based on different criteria. And so we'll see.
Okay. Well, it's going to be interesting how the global economy shakes out, because obviously each country has its own rules, but it seems pretty similar that every country is taking COVID extremely serious. I mean, it's deadly serious. Let me take a second and welcome Phoenix Starborn, Mike Shaw TV. I saw Wade come into the stream. Hey, everybody.
Hey, guys.
Let's keep in mind as we go throughout the rest of this conversation, the backdrop that, and we'll just consider this to be true and factual, right?
Okay.
That the nations around the world will have to respond fiscally to this in one way or another, whether it be direct cash infusion to the citizenry, supercharged loans or grants to businesses, etc. But there will have to be an infusion of money into the economies, because the velocity of money around the world is at the lowest it's ever been in recorded history.
Wow.
That says a lot.
Sure does.
That says a lot. That's fact. So with that being said, I think it's fair to say that everybody on this stream, and of course you and I, have a very vested interest in the success of some of our investments. And I want to focus on XRP, but this same principle and the things that we're going to talk about can really be applied to almost any investment. And that is this: there are going to be themes and narratives that you hear over and over and over again. And just because you hear them 1,000 times, I want to make very clear, it doesn't mean they're true. So this first topic I want to go over with you is this. It's this: we need regulatory clarity before our assets can take off. And so I wanted to ask you what you thought about that. And in any of your thinking, research, study, etc., have you been able to identify the specific clarity needed for the ropes to be taken off, for XRP to become unchained?
Yeah, a couple things pop into my mind. First, there is regulation clarity around the world in other countries. And I know some YouTubers have addressed this, and I'm not of the mind that if just one country out of 190 adds some sort of regulation clarity, whatever that may be, that all of a sudden, XRP is going to globally take off. And I don't think it's also restraining it from its growth around the world. There's a lot of countries, Japan, Thailand, and many others that are, doing what they're doing with the Ripple platform and XRP, regardless of what the regulations are in the US. So I think, and I'm sure you share this too, that, living outside of the US, you can't help but have a more global view. Not to say you can't if you live in the US. I'm not saying that at all, but your go-to default thinking is, even myself, is more global now. And so I don't see, and I've mentioned this before, I worry about something I'll just call the Coinbase effect, for lack of a better phrase, that if you remember before XRP was listed on Coinbase, everyone was chanting, in unison, once we get listed on Coinbase, it's the price of XRP is going to take off. And it got listed on Coinbase and nothing. And if anything, I think it went down at first. So I worry about that with the regulation clarity, which you mentioned this before, Jerry. We still have to define what that is in the US. And once, you get some sort of definition, will it shoot it to the moon, so to speak? I don't think it will. I think it'll help it. Obviously, anything, going with the theme of any tailwind that we get in our back is going to help. But I just don't think it will to the massive amount that everyone is building it up to be. I think it's overblown. I think it'll help. Let me just say that for sure. But I just look globally and, I see regulation clarity around the world. Then the counter argument to that is that, well, the US market is so big and there's so much money from the US market that would go into it. And it's bigger than these other markets that have regulation. And, you can make an argument for that as well. So I guess, in summary, I think it'll help, but I think it's not going to be as big. It won't be a single event catalyst like everyone's, is thinking it is. And I could be wrong. I mean, we've been clinging to single event catalysts for how many years now that haven't shot it to the moon. So I think it's going to be, either the network effect of the platform being built up efficiently around the world, or it's going to have to be a multiple catalyst or multiple event catalyst situation to make it shoot up, not just a single event.
Well, I'll tell you. So, this has always perplexed me for quite a while, actually. And so we have a lot of time on this show, so I'll walk you through it. When the announcement that Ripple was making their investment into MoneyGram as a actual equity owner in the business, as well as they're going to have a partner in MoneyGram for ODL use, I thought, okay, this is wonderful. This is what we need. We need publicly traded international companies, right? Sure, it's a United States company, but it does business internationally, right? So it was kind of this perfect kind of company to get in bed with, to get our product out into the world so the world could see the value proposition that we all have read about. Okay, I thought this was great. And I understood there were going to be a lot of hurdles along the way. But they were able to start and do it. A US publicly traded company using a process of taking their customers' US dollars, sending them to Bitstamp for XRP, having that XRP get sent to Bitso exchanging the XRP for Mexican peso and depositing it directly in the recipient's bank account. That is the ODL process that we all wanted to see. Well, if regulatory clarity was needed how did MoneyGram bypass it? The truth is they didn't bypass it. They acted 100% within the law. So all that stuff about regulatory clarity never made any sense to me. But then the argument comes, okay, Jerry, listen, MoneyGram isn't a pimple on the value transmission around the world's behind.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. You're right. MoneyGram's a small player. Okay, great. Next question. So which led to the actual players that really move money are banks, and they're licensed differently and regulated differently. I say, okay, I get it. I understand. But wait a second. We're a year into this. And although the big banks are regulatorily not going to get into the space because the clarity they need isn't there, MoneyGram's been in the space and they're not ramping up. Why are they not ramping up? It's not a regulatory issue.
Right.
It's other business-related structural issues. Okay, great. I don't know. I don't need to know. I just know it isn't ramping up. Okay, great. But I hear this bell, this chant. We need regulatory clarity. We need regulatory clarity. We need regulatory clarity. And today, my friend, I got it. I got very specifically, because I've asked Twitter, everywhere I find, please somebody explain to me specifically the regulatory clarity we need. Because when I look and do my research, I can see that in a 2017 document from a regulatory body called FinCEN, that they clearly state that scratch that XRP is a currency. And as a matter of fact, because it is a digital currency, Ripple misused it in a place they didn't have a license to do so and got a $250,000 fine for using a digital currency in a place they weren't licensed to do it. Okay, great. But so we have a regulator who's defined it as digital currency. Fast forward to this year, DOJ did a big 8-page document on cryptocurrencies. The Department of Justice for the United States of America classifies XRP as a virtual digital currency. DOJ, they enforce laws, hence they are regulators. By and large, that is okay. So we've got two now that have stated XRP is a digital currency. And I'm thinking to myself, what kind of clarity do you really need? What's going on here? None of this is making any sense to me. And then I heard it today. I heard the Brad Garlinghouse podcast. This is an audio-only podcast with Block One. Brad, matter of fact, tweeted it out today, and I went and listened to it. And in his words, very clearly, the entire summation of the regulatory clarity that they need comes from one regulator, the SEC. And they need or want the same designation that Bitcoin and Ethereum got. Now, I thought to myself, that rings of a call to action to me. That rings of me creating a letter to every important member of the SEC. And then hopefully getting the entire XRP community to do the same thing. Can you imagine filling Hester Pierce, Jay Clayton, the rest of the commissioners' inboxes with, take 5 minutes and put the no action letter out, you guys. Come on. Level the playing field for a U.S. company for once. And then it made sense to me. Okay, that's specifically what's needed.
Yeah.
Right? So if we know what is specifically needed, then we can put our brains and our voices to let's create that solution. Because when we're just saying we need regulatory clarity, it's very vague.
Yeah.
and hard to address. How do I take action on that? Right?
Right.
It's like if you were a parent, and many of the people in the stream are, and you get a letter from the school, your child is having issues. Okay. And he cannot return until the issues are resolved. Okay. What are the issues? He can't return until they're resolved. No, I understand that. What are the issues specifically? Help me. What are the specific issues so that we can address them? Your token will not moon without regulatory clarity.
Right.
And I just got so fed up with that. So anyway, we got an answer. Definitively, the SEC needs to rule XRP is not a security. And that will enable Ripple to do some things that, until that happens, are not going to get done. What those are specifically, Brad didn't go into. But it was a really good podcast, and I'm glad that I spent the time listening to it.
I'll have to check it out.
It really is. It really is good. How about this? How about another one? What's another one of these single event?
Well, if I could jump on just to close on that last topic. You know, people in our space have made a good argument that, you know, the regulatory clarity is preventing, you know, the big institutions from jumping in or the big money from jumping in. And I think there, you know, there's a good argument for that. So that I think could be, you know, a good single event. If the single event is large enough, then perhaps a single event catalyst will, you know, shoot the price up. You know, it just depends on how it impacts the supply and demand, which large institutional money that's, you know, supposedly rumored to be on the sidelines waiting to jump in. If they do jump in, then that could be it, because then that kickstarts the media reporting on it, right? You know, all the business and cable shows will be reporting on all this money jumping in. And that could be, you know, you can make a good argument for that, that regulatory clarity would kickstart the money jumping in from the large players. And I can be on board with that argument.
Well, let me be the bearer of bad news and squash that hope and dream that you have. Yes, folks, I am the dream crusher tonight. Here's the deal. All the regulatory clarity in the world will not change something that is absolutely paramount and foundational to the quote unquote big money. Now, I want to define this because I'm not going to do this broad, gray stroke, ambiguous thing. I'm going to be very specific. I think regulatory clarity will open doors for Ripple partners to use XRP in existing enterprise capital flows. This is wonderful for Ripple. This is wonderful for ODL. But as we've already seen, there are so many hurdles involved in ODL gaining any real substantive volume that it's not affecting the supply and demand metric. All right. So with that being said, let's transition to the institutional money. That has been a big thing since I've been here February 2018. And it's, hey, institutional money is right around the corner. Institutional money is right around the corner. Oh, I can tell you, I can see the top of the hats of the institutional money riding in on the horses all over the prairie as the sun goes down and the hats of the institutional investors are becoming larger and larger. The money's coming, the money's coming, the money's coming. Guess what? I'm on the phone the other day with a close buddy of mine. Now, this is a very wealthy man who happens to have one of his best friends who's an acquaintance of mine is an actuary. This guy is somebody who directs funds from a pension into investment
vehicles,
whether it be commodities, whether it be equities, whether it be bonds, etc. And as I was discussing with my buddy, who told me he had a question because he's a laggard. He doesn't want to, He does not want to put his money in digital assets.
Crypto, yeah.
He's doing fine in the equities market. He's in the options market. This dude trades 100 stock bundles of Amazon. Amazon's $3,000 something a share. He buys 100 of them at a time and does option stuff with them. So to give you some scope of what he plays with and the world he's living in. And I'm telling him about XRP and Bitcoin and, get an Uphold account and just, throw 20,000 at the top three divided equally, 33% each. You'll be fine. You're going to thank me for it. He comes back. This is yesterday. We're having this conversation. He says to me, hey, I talked to Johnny and I was talking about the digital assets, because I'm seeing it on the news too. He's seeing the stuff about Bitcoin surging and all that kind of stuff. And he says, what are you guys at the plan thinking about this? And Johnny says, well, I have a little personal Coinbase account and, I've put a few $1,000s into it, but we won't touch it. We're not going to touch, we're considering Bitcoin and we're considering Ethereum, but all that other stuff we won't get involved with. And Rick asked why. And he said, well, there are other assets that have quality tech that I'd invest in personally, but we can't invest in as a plan because we have guidelines and bylaws to what's an acceptable allocation for investment and what isn't. That doesn't have anything to do with the asset itself. For instance, they are precluded from investing in anything that has a unit price below $5. It goes all the way back to when these funds and these bylaws and guidelines were created, that back then there was a penny stock market, right? Penny stocks had a market. Some of them were promising small, tiny little companies, and some of them were shitty companies and da-da-da-da-da. But the point being is the risk associated with undercapitalized markets was too high for them to take the risk on. Even though everybody and their brother is searching for gains and yield, you could have an absolute superstar of an asset. But if it's priced at 27 cents per unit, they can't touch it. As I'm looking at and thinking about this quote unquote, the institutional money is coming, I have to tell you the truth. It's coming for Bitcoin and it's coming for Ethereum. It's not coming for XRP. And we all need to be very clear that it has nothing to do with the technology of XRP. It has nothing to do with the use case. It has nothing to do with anything other than the price of the asset. 401ks, mutual funds, sovereign wealth funds, pension plans, sovereign wealth funds, pensions, all endowments, university endowments. They all have very, very, very similar guidelines and rules about what qualifies as an investable asset. And that same set of rules applies to every bond, every stock, and every commodity they look at. Now, with that knowledge in my head, and I start looking at the backdrop of what I see from a macro perspective, right? We have a second wave of COVID sweeping the world. Europe looks in really bad shape. The United States, the news is filled with case numbers and death numbers rising. I can extrapolate with a certain amount of conviction that we are going to see varied measures of containment, whether that be in full lockdown. Governments around the world are going to react to this. And it's not going to be in a growth way. It's going to be in a restriction way. What that tells me is that these things that drive value and drive growth aren't going to be present. Economies need a velocity of money. Well, if people are sequestered and not spending, then your velocity of money goes down. If you have a demographic wave of of epic proportions, because the baby boomers they're not in their growth phase. They're in their shutdown retirement phase. All these things, this convergence of all these things are coming together that tell me the economy is going to continue to sputter, which means they're going to need to do something. They're going to need to stimulate. That's the tools they have. Well, this is all wonderful for Bitcoin and Ethereum, as these institutions who know this can allocate funds to them. But those of us who are in XRP, we're going to be left out, unfortunately. And that's just the truth. And we need to understand the playground that we're playing in. Mm-hmm. If XRP could somehow lift itself out of the mud where the supply and demand metric could be met by something other than institutional investors, I would like to know what that is. I think it could be integration into FX markets for swap contract settlement, or other forms of settlement as it pertains to this for that. And there's a custodian in the middle. And the reason being is because the legacy capital markets way of settling things is a nice 3 to 5 day period of time. And we know that asset XRP technologically can allow all those things to happen near instantaneous, within 3, 4, 5, 6 seconds. So without some monstrous use case that's actually demanding the asset from the market to facilitate its use, the investment side of the XRP going to the moon from institutional investors, to me, is a squash story, unless all these elements change their guidelines and bylaws, which takes an act of friggin' God to do. And I think we all need to be very, very, very cognizant of that, and have our investment strategies and plans reflect reality, as opposed to the hopium of we need this or we need that. This one catalyst is going to do this, and this one catalyst is going to do that. Your thoughts, sir? I know I had a bit of a rant there, but
that's okay. Yeah. Oh, you preaching to the choir on that. Number one, the globalists have announced that they're going to have rolling lockdowns. I mean, they've said that that's going to happen. So, we can expect that. They're going to they telegraph their moves. They tell us ahead of time. So there's no doubt that they're going to continue to gut the global economy. That's just, that's their plan. That's what they do.
Hey, can I take a time out just real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say to the audience, I know these are supercharged statements that I'm saying. One, I've researched them. I am not creating some controversial thing for the sake of controversy. I see a statement, stacking ZERPs, couldn't disagree more. I want you to disagree. Let's have good discourse between each other. And I want to invite anyone in the stream tonight that would like to come in studio with DNA, Digital Nomad Investor, and myself, and discuss this and have a conversation, that you're welcome to. Just state, hey, just put in your chat, I want to come in studio. Brady will get you a link and we will get you in, because I want your voice heard. Okay, I'm sorry. I just wanted to make sure I threw that out there. Carry on, sir.
It's all good. I mean, if anyone's watched my channel for a period of time, I know a lot of my topics come off as a big gloom and doom too. But I firmly believe that as the gloomier that the global economy gets, inversely, that opens opportunities for digital assets to be used to fix those gloomy problems. So that's how I address that issue. That it is gloomy. I mean, we're both trying to be realistic about things, but there's a flip side to that coin. And like I said, it's an inverse relationship, in my opinion. The worse the global economy gets, the more there is a need for alternative solutions, because they can't keep trying to fix it with the same things they've been doing for decades, because that's what got us here. So in my opinion, the only two real asset classes or assets that they can pull value from, because we got to build a foundation, a global economy structure based on a foundation of value, not debt. I don't think anyone would disagree with that, because debt-based economy is where we're at now. That's what caused the problem. The only things I think they can pull value from to start this foundation from or build it on is gold or digital assets, some combination thereof. I'm not saying tie everything to gold. I know we've been hearing a lot of that. People I think don't necessarily think that one through, but nonetheless, it's got to be something to that effect, is starting from a foundation of value. That's got to be the first principle. And they've been preaching about digital assets and digital disruption. So we know they're gonna use that in some way, shape, or form. It only serves their interests, so we're aligned in our goals with them, the ones that are pulling the strings when it comes to digital assets. The motivation is different. We're doing it as investors. They're doing it more from the control standpoint. Moving on, to add some sort of bright light to this topic, is I think we can look to places like SBI and entities like SBI and what they're doing. I think they're starting to do, and I want to stay in my own lane here and not get outside of my area. But they're starting to, or have been working on, alternate uses of the Ripple platform and XRP. So I think that addresses what you're talking about. And if someone in the audience wants to chime in on that, like I said, I want to stay in my lane. If Crypto Eddie's here, she's the one that covers she's the expert on that, and she's been covering that very well. And so I think that, going through this lockdown nightmare, there are beacons of hope that are just, like SBI and what's going on. And I think, Jerry, you've covered some SBI stuff as well. I stay away from that.
All over it.
Yeah. So it's not my lane. So I rightfully bow to people that are more researched on it than I. So I think that's something that we can jump onto. Like I said, I learned from my background on the crisis team that, rarely do things change drastically from single event catalyst. It's usually the milestone I used when I did my work was I looked for 3 events to change a situation drastically. In a crisis, you're looking for events to deconstruct so you can reconstruct them in a way that's such that it's not a crisis. But you flip that on its head, in investing, you can still use a similar theme. Rarely is a single catalyst event going to cause great change. It's usually a multiple amount of catalysts, multiple amount of events. So, it gotta get to wrap that up. It's there are beacons of hope, such as SBI. Look to Asia. There's so much that Asia is ahead of the world in, especially Japan. All things tech. If you could just to summarize and generalize, all things tech. Japan and to a lesser extent, in a different way, South Korea, are far ahead of the rest of the world, or ahead of the rest of the world in many ways. And so what SBI is doing with XRP in Japan, and then also what Thailand's even doing, believe it or not, they're further ahead in their clarity and things like that than the U.S., believe it or not. So, those are places I think for us as a community to look to for something positive and growth, given the restrictions that you mentioned of the continued lockdowns, the continued umbrella or dark cloud of this medical emergency, quote unquote, air quotes, hanging over our heads, where growth could still take place. So
I'm with you. Real quick, Crypto Ice, great to see you, Ice. Tony, great to see you. Bitta in the car, not going to make it to the show, but listening. Thank you, Bitta. Mike's Crypto, great to have you. Sophie, Wonderful to have you participating. Okay. I am not saying that there isn't value in XRP. That is not at all what I'm saying.
Right. And I didn't take it that way.
I'm trying to bring clarity to these nonsensical statements that I hear over and over and over again that have no substantiation. They're not substantiated. A statement that I feel is in this category is this: we just need regulatory clarity. For what? What do we need regulatory clarity for? For XRP to go to the moon. Okay, what's stopping it from going to the moon? Regulatory clarity. No, specifically. I don't really know. That drives me nuts. Then the institutions are coming. The institutions are coming like it's Paul Revere riding up the Eastern Seaboard. The institutions are coming. The institutions are coming, baby. Pack your bags because they're going to flick that switch and bada bing, bada boom, bada ding, da da da. And I'll tell you what, the United States and Europe are very similar in the way that whether they be pooled or public funds are used to allocate for investment. I'm talking about the pension plans, sovereign wealth funds, endowments, da 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 da. They all have guidelines and they all have bylaws and they all have a very strict criteria in which they use to allocate their funds for investment purposes. And in the sooner that you get on board with understanding what those are, then you'll be able to discern who's coming and who's not coming.
Right.
Vet bro, Lance, love Lance. See him all the time. Says, hey, what about Grayscale? Da, da, da. Grayscale is a crypto fund. Of course they are open to all kinds of digital assets, but they're not the California State Employees Pension Fund. And I love Grayscale. I think they're great for the space. I think we just need to understand, again, the playground that we're playing. And that's all that I ask anybody to do, is to try to understand the rules of the game we're playing. Now, one thing I find really interesting, and I talked about this, I think I mentioned this already in the show, and if I haven't, I'll elaborate on it. There is a world outside of Ripple, the company, and outside of Ripple Net that should and could and will, provided the correct environment, to utilize XRP. Because we all know at a very intuitive level, if you've ever had to move Bitcoin or Ethereum or some other digital asset from one thing to another thing, nothing is faster than XRP. And when you look at the fees or the costs, nothing's cheaper than XRP. I made a joke about it today on Twitter. I said, hey, for shits and giggles, I have a poker site that I can play for money on. They will not take anything but Bitcoin as far as digital assets. It's either US dollars or Bitcoin. So I sent $75 in Bitcoin. It cost me $4.48. That was the Bitcoin network fee. Can you believe that? $4.48. Kelly, good to have you. Alex woke up. Good to have you. So, you know, we all know it's an incredible asset. XLM is also an incredible asset. Maybe I don't talk enough about Stellar because I own so much more XRP than I do Stellar. I do have some Stellar. I have 10,000 Stellar or something in my portfolio, but it's not what I banked on to make daddy wealthy. How about that? I'm not banking on Stellar to make me wealthy. I am banking on XRP to make me wealthy. And as I learn more about the world of finance, increasing my financial literacy, and I'm developing and seeing and learning these things, I'm bringing them to you folks, hoping that you will come along this journey with me. It's important that we challenge our assumptions. it's important that we push back on things we don't understand and ask for clarity. Folks, is there anything in the chat box that you want on screen as something for D and I to continue to talk about? Or is there one of you that would like to come spend the last 7, 8, 9 minutes of the show in studio with us? Just let Brady know. He will get you a link and we'll get you in studio. You don't have to be on camera, but you do have to have your mic working. It doesn't work good with hand signals with no camera.
Come on in, folks.
Come on in. The water's fine. Hey, D&I, what do you think about Celsius Network, man? What do you think about these Nexos and Celsius, but specifically Celsius?
I've not really looked into it, to be honest with you, to give a decent opinion on it. Just to kind of summarize, and this is something you and I exchange topics on Twitter about, my investing in crypto is just part of my portfolio. It's actually less than 5%, of my overall portfolio. And that you mentioned one of your kind of pet peeves, and one of my pet peeves in this space is that the use of the word diversification. And I see a lot of people on you, not yourself, but others. There's really two halves of diversification, but we hear in our space all the time people that quote unquote aren't financial advisors, but give financial advice, and talk about just, buying more crypto than just one or two to be quote unquote diversified and have a diversified investment portfolio. And, there's within class, there's two parts of diversification. There's within class, which is what people in our space talk about, but there's also between class, real estate, commodities, fixed income assets, business venture funding. There's all kinds of different classes of assets that you can invest in to have a truly diversified investment portfolio. So, I just get, it just perks my attention when I see people say, "Oh, you only got XRP," or to other people they say this, and you're not diversified. And again, I'm not. It's just I hear you've heard people say it that way too.
It's absolutely ridiculous. Here's the thing,
and then so you for the same theme that you have of bringing people along for the ride, sharing information as a global kind of hive mind thing, people talk about just you have to buy more than one crypto to be diversified. I have 98% of my crypto is in XRP, and then just a few percent in a couple others. And my investment portfolio is very diversified. Now people hear that, they're like, "There's no way if you have almost all of it in XRP." Well, I have a very good diversification between class. So, XRP, the reason I even got into crypto was I had about 5% of my investment portfolio that I could allocate towards higher risk, higher return assets. And I was looking at all sorts of different things, and crypto came on my radar, and I started exploring it, and that's how I got into it. But it's still less than 5% of my overall investment portfolio, and it's spread out between real estate and various different parts of within class real estate investments, commodities, business investments. I did some venture capital funding and startups, things of this nature. So I just like people to be aware that there's more than the 150% of the definition of diversification that our space seems to use, and to be aware of that. So I don't know how I got off on that rant. I guess it was.
Let me chime in for a second, because
just let me close real quick. And I know you responded to one of my tweets, and you made a very good point, and I wasn't really addressing the situation that you mentioned, because you said, well, everyone's situation is different and risk profile is different and everything else, which I agree with 100%. And all I'm saying, and I regret even tweeting out what I did, not because of what you said, but it just got, people ran with it, And all I'm saying is, I'm not saying, commenting on anyone individually. All I'm saying is to understand, I think we are responsible for understanding the true definition of the word and the strategy of diversification. And if we're going to preach it accurately, and to preach between class and within class, not just within class. And, there's nothing wrong with having a within class portfolio. There's, like you said, everyone's circumstances are different. That's why I never comment on, is this a good investment or is that a good investment? Because for the exact reasons that you mentioned, everyone's investment needs and risk profile and all the other factors and criteria for developing your investment portfolio are different and individual and specific to them. So that my comment about diversification wasn't about any one particular strategy or person, just to use it and define it correctly.
Well, I tell you, here's the thing. There is no one best way. There's no best practice.
Right.
Okay. Each and every single one of us has our own goals.
Right.
It starts with that. What are your goals? If you're going to be an investor, have some friggin' goals.
Yeah.
And then understand how what you have from whether you're investable or disposable income or other assets, if they need to be liquidated so that they can become investments, whatever. It's what are my goals? What do I have? And what can I continue to do? Mm-hmm. Just in this stream of 50-something people, we're going to have different income levels. We're going to have different ages. We're going to have different time horizons. We're going to have different risk appetites. We're going to have different. So there is no one way. There is no one. This is not better for you than that. Right. Once you come up with your goals and you understand what you have to work with, then you can start to develop a strategy so that you can produce the results that you want, not the results that Digital Asset Investor wants or Digital Nomad Investor wants or Jerry Hall wants or whoever you listen to.
Right.
Right. I personally chose a concentrated investment in a highly volatile, innovative technology called blockchain. And there's a few assets in that. That's 90% of my portfolio. Yes, I have a Schwab account. Yes, I have Valero, the oil company. Yes, I have AG&C, a real estate investment trust. Yes, I have that. But it's not that much relative to my crypto investment. And the reason being is because I did the math for the goals. I have goals. I want to be wealthy. So wealthy to me means I need to have over $1 million of capital working for me. That's how I've defined wealthy, over $1 million of capital. Okay, well, for me to get wealthy, putting money in the already inflated stock market that doesn't have the promise of the kind of growth that I would need in valuation to get there, well, that doesn't exist. Fixed income, that doesn't provide it for me. Gold, there are some commodities that if I became an excellent trader, that I could probably take advantage of, because commodities are very cyclical. And you can take, as a trader, you can take advantage of these things, but I'm not a good trader. And then I found crypto and I went, okay, I placed my bets in this crypto sphere on these assets that I think are going to do well. Within 5 years, I could hit that $1 million number. I could not find that bet anywhere else. So I've taken a concentrated bet. Live modestly now in Costa Rica while this investment thesis of mine plays itself out. But my investment strategy had all those elements in play. My goals, what did I have to work with? What's my risk appetite? Am I willing to go to zero on a high risk thing? All these things that I keep talking about every friggin' week. It's part of how I created my strategy.
Right. You've thought it through.
I've thought it through. And that's all I've asked anybody that ever listens to my voice to do, is think about your situation.
Exactly.
So when somebody comes out and says, da 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 da, if they can't substantiate it, then I just want to pass them by. I would so much rather have an intellectual, respectful conversation, even if we disagree on something, than to continue to be bombarded with stuff that doesn't have any substance behind it.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's one of the things I've always enjoyed about you. Now, I will tell you, I have a story as it pertains to these platforms. Anytime you use a Nexo or a Celsius, and look what happened to Cred, et cetera, you have to understand that you are taking a third-party risk. The third party is that platform. What if they shut down? What if they go bankrupt? What if somebody maliciously affects their software? These are all risks you need to understand. Mm-hmm. The farther you get away from your keys, your crypto, the farther out the risk curve you're going.
Yeah, good
now,
point.
I'm not saying that certain risks aren't priced in. Like, for instance, with platforms like Celsius and Nexo, they pay a very nice little dividend or interest in the form of the underlying asset. So if the asset's going up, if your little percentage is you're getting 5 XRP every day, and it doesn't matter if XRP is 5 cents per unit or $100 per unit, you're going to get 5 of them per day because they're based off the total number of XRP that you put on the platform. That is a wonderful mechanism to get return on asset. It's just like a dividend stock that is reinvesting. You're not getting money with your dividends, you're getting underlying stock.
And you've turned a speculative investment into a fixed asset in that regard too. You know, fixed income asset.
But in this particular situation,
and that's a good thing.
It's a good thing until it isn't a good thing. Here is the risk that people do not understand. They're not calculating this. They're not thinking about this. I'm getting 10 XRP every day. I'm getting 15 XRP any day. I'm getting 25 XRP every day. That's wonderful. When XRP stays range bound between 22 cents and 26 cents, okay, no big deal. What happens to these platforms when XRP goes up? Or what happens to these platforms like right now as Bitcoin is exploding? You got to remember, if they're giving you the asset on a daily basis or every 5 days or whatever the time frame is, where are they getting the asset? You got to remember, these platforms lend and borrow in US dollars. So if I put my Bitcoin on Celsius and they're paying me interest in the form of Bitcoin. But if I take a loan and collateralize it with my Bitcoin, that loan's in US dollars. US dollars go up inflation and deflation is such a small little, it doesn't mean anything. So what happens when Bitcoin goes to 20,000 or XRP goes to $5? Where are they going to get the XRP to pay you that 5 XRP per day? Think about it. The loans are being paid out in dollars. You're not repaying them back in the underlying asset. You repay your loans in dollars. Think about that. Run the tape all the way through. Everybody needs to understand the risks they are taking when they do the things that they do. That's all. Right. That's all I'm saying. I've done the math. I understand the risks. I know that for me with Nexo, I've put a large chunk of assets on Nexo, and it generates assets every day. And I took a small loan against it. The loan I took against it, I bought some other assets with. And I bought a shit ton of Cardano, and it's staking in my Daedalus wallet. But the point being is that I know there's going to come a time, especially with Bitcoin, XRP, and Ethereum, that as the market cap and the price goes up, the ability for the platform to repay me in the underlying asset becomes harder and harder and harder. Where do those funds come from? Remember, the money they've lent out, they're being repaid in US dollars. Think about it. That's all I ask. So
someone asked a question prior, Brady did a question from someone saying about price predictions in 12 to 24 months for XRP. And oh, there we go. Wade, yeah, I don't do any price predictions per se of like where I think it will be. But I've crunched numbers on various different global verticals, and you guys can do this too. And the amount or the value that XRP would have to be, depending on the percentage of market share that XRP gained in these various different global verticals. And you can do the back of the envelope calculations on that. If you want to get some good, more definitive work on that, research backed, I always refer to Susie, Crypto Granny, she goes by now. She's done a number of she's done recently business valuations on Ripple, the company, and she's done prior valuations on XRP. They're not price predictions. They're if-then scenarios that if XRP gets, I think the first one she did was on Swift. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. It was a while ago when I watched the video, but she said it was going to get to 334 if it gets, 1, 5, or 10% of Swift's business, I think was the way she structured that. Again, if I'm saying that incorrectly, someone correct me. And then she did a revised one, and I don't know if it was based on penetrating Swift's market or not. And it was like $600 and something. And again, it's not a price. There's a difference between a price prediction and doing a projection of where the price could be or would need to be if it penetrated these certain percentages of the various markets. So if that's why, I won't do price predictions because it's just that, it's a prediction. It's no more valid than, trying to do TA with crypto. Crypto's too small of a market to really try and carry over most, I'd say 80% of the TA tools to crypto from the stock market. Resistance and support levels and a few other things I think play out pretty well. But, in terms of predicting prices, I don't do price predictions because there's just no way to accurately do it.
Cool.
But
hey,
projections,
we're getting close to the end here, so I'm all for making points. But once we make a point, let's move on to another point. And here's a great one. Thoughts on Gary Gensler being part of Biden's financial task force. I saw a great lecture that he did to his MIT class, and Gary Gensler understands cryptocurrencies and the differences between Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP, functionality, speed, cost, dynamics, the algorithms that allow the validation processes to happen for the different ones. Whether he supports your favorite coin or not is a whole different debate, but he is knowledgeable in this space. And I think that is wonderful for anybody that's going to be part of an economic task force for the next 4 years.
Hang on one second. I'll be right back, Jerry. One of my deliveries came in, okay?
No worries. Well, it is, by the way, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but we've got the Brady box on the screen, and it is time for the producer extraordinaire to make a presence on the show. And drum roll, please.
I had to do a little switch.
You did the bait and switch on me with the Brady phone. So Brady, what do you think?
I was mobile.
What do you think about this show so far tonight? Am I out of line? Am I going crazy? Am I being a dick? What's happening?
I think you're doing the right thing, and you're doing you're guiding other people into what they should also be doing, because you're thinking about this from the standpoint of, hey, this is my capital that I have in this asset, and then I need to assess every now and then the asset itself. Does it warrant my investment still? And I think Nick talks about that a lot, but he never really goes into, what's the start of a conversation that may change your mind or may change a belief that you once held, and how comfortable are you letting that go? So I think this is a great way to communicate with one another. And I think Lance said it very well, is that he can't, it's like we need to talk about these frictional and not contested things, but we need to speak about these things, because if we can't talk about it with each other, normal people are useless. So, I mean, we need to figure out how to talk amongst each other to see if what we're thinking is absolutely nuts or not, or to what degree. We don't want to get all hope and whimsy. We want to keep our feet on the ground, but we know there's something here.
I agree. Hey, Stephen Kirk.
Thanks,
you know what?
Julio.
Stephen. Nice to see you pop in. I think Stephen came in a little late.
My food came.
So D and I, we have this little
Sorry.
tradition that I invite you to stay for an after show, and it's straight. I mean, it's voluntary or not. So I'm going to give you an opportunity real quick for last thoughts on the air with the audience, and then I'll put you in the green room where you can stay or leave, depending upon what you
I'll
want
stick
to do.
around. Yeah,
All
I'll
right.
stick around.
Well, what are your final thoughts for the folks who are in the stream with us?
Thanks, Jerry, for having me on. I appreciate it. It's a great meeting with the family all the time. The XRP family. Everyone, thanks for dropping in. And again, we're living in such a God. I don't even know how to say it. I've used the word phrase gloom and doom too much. We're just living in such challenging times that and I get why people are kind of latching on to crypto. It is kind of a lifeline for many of us.
It is.
Many people, and there's nothing wrong with that. We need a beacon of light, so to speak, during these times. So again, just balance out when we keep getting bombarded, because we're going to get bombarded by mainstream media about how horrible everything is and how horrible the medical fallout is. That there's a flip side to all of that. If you're in the digital asset space, that is the flip side. That we're ahead of the game. We're ahead of almost most of the entire planet. Knowing also, especially folks that have followed my channel, my mantra of understanding what the powers that be are going to do and prepare ahead of time. And my latest mantra is decentralize ourselves off of our government control and do anything you can to get out from under their thumb, and because it's only going to get worse. It's not going to get better. And they're telling it to us. It's not me connecting dots. It's not me speculating. It's just me listening to what they're telling us and understanding how governments think and work. And they're telling us, so listen to them. They're telling us what they're going to do. They're not hiding it. They have to tell us because it's a sales pitch. And the bigger the end game that they're trying to sell us, the bigger the sales pitch is.
Yeah.
So, listen to the sales pitch, see, and see how you can decentralize yourself, your food sources, your medical needs, your, financial situation, everything, and just get out from underneath that. We're ahead of the game. That's the good news. And that's our beacon of light, is we're ahead of all of this. If you're in this space and you're listening to folks that all bring different things, your perspective from where you are, and everyone else, there's a lot of things to look forward to, but you wouldn't believe that if all you watch is and believe the mainstream media, what they script out. They just bombard us with horrible news. But we're ahead of the game. That's the bottom line.
Right on, brother. I'll see you in the green room. We'll be there shortly. Brady, my brother, your final thoughts.
Always. Well, I was going to be plain. Always be ready to learn, I guess. I don't know. I mean, I guess I'm trying to I would call this an extension bear market, even though Bitcoin's kind of going nuts. But like you figured out with your staking, and Cardano has with its native asset, and other ways of staking or getting a return on your investment without having to sell it, whether that's borrowing against it or loaning it out, what have you. All of these things are good to know, not only to get our head out of the smoke of hopium and whimsy, but I have been spending a lot less time on Twitter because I've been trying to figure out the options market. And to me, that's a perfect trade-off of time of, hey, figure out what this is, figure out how to make money off of it, and don't worry about prices going sideways. So, expanding your horizons not only can improve your investments in the knowledge, but also improve your short-term investments, because you can either make money or make a return on asset, depending on how you look at money. Anyway, keep it trucking, people. Keep it trucking.
All right. I'll see you in a minute. Oops. Which one are? Oh, that's right. You got. Okay. So, folks, I'm often reminded the number one asset that I have is my attention, my state of being, my mind. And that part of being wealthy, right, is how I allocate that precious resource of my attention. And I believe that's true for you folks too. So I want to just let you know how grateful I am that you decided to tune in and share some of your attention with me, Brady, tonight's guest, Digital Nomad Investor, and with each other in the stream. Your absolute support and participation in shows like this, I find remarkable, because there's a lot of demands. A lot of people out there saying, put your eyes on this, put your eyes on that. And you folks chose to spend this time with us. So on behalf of Brady, myself, and of course, Digital Nomad Investor, we thank you. And until next time, Pura Vida.